As the night fell, colorful lights lit up on the high-rise building of Xinghai City. The streets were filled with water and dragons, and the noise was endless. Lin Haotian walked out of the company building with a tired body. The whitened t-shirt on his body looked a little out of place with the denim pants. He looked down at his phone, and the screen showed 9:30 p.m. and several unread overtime notices. He sniffed, rubbed his sore shoulders, and muttered, "I've been working overtime again and my life is almost gone. What kind of immortal should I still practice? It's almost the same to repair a bed." He was just an ordinary worker, 25 years old, pretty and handsome, with three-dimensional facial features, but his face was tired and filled with a little bit of air. "I live in this bustling city every day, and I have to pay the rent with my wages, and occasionally I have to pay the wedding call from my hometown." Lin Haotian smiled mockingly, looked up at the sparse stars in the sky, and there was a sense of indescribable empty space in his heart. Tonight's overtime task was an emergency report, but the computer still died 2 times, and he had to wait until now. After walking out of the company building, he did not rush home, but went to the alley behind the building, intending to smoke and calm his mood. The light in the alley was dim, only a few old road lights were barely lit, and a scent of dampness was scented in the air. Lin Haotian leaned against the wall, lit a smoke, took a breath, and heard a low sound coming from nowhere. "Are you sure it's here? The spirit fluctuations are very weak." A man's voice sounded a little impatient. "Stop talking about it, the detectors of the Alliance will not be wrong. There must be a waking up of the spirit nearby. It may be a newcomer who has not been discovered." Another voice responded coldly, with a high tone. Lin Haotian glanced at the naughty eyebrows and thought to himself what this person is talking about. Spirit? Spiritual root? It sounds like the settings on the internet. Without thinking too much, he slammed the smoke and prepared to leave quietly so as not to get into trouble. But at this moment, a strong sense of dizziness suddenly came, and he almost fell down. "Who is there?" The cold voice suddenly rose, and then a rapid pace approached him. Lin Haotian felt nervous and stood up straight in his wall. When he turned around, he saw 2 men wearing long black robes walking towards him. They look over 30 years old, one with a face full of beards, the other is as thin as a bamboo pole, and the eyes are as sharp as if they can penetrate people. Lin Haotian was playing drums in his heart, but he was still determined on his face. He said, "Brother, I'm just passing by. There's nothing to do. You're busy with yours." The man with bearded cheeks sneered, looked him up and down, and opened his mouth. "Passed by? Boy, this place is not something ordinary people can come. Do you feel something unusual? Exception? What's the abnormal?" "I just took a smoke after working overtime, nothing was unusual." Lin Haotian was confused and tried to fool him. But as his voice fell, a sudden buzzing sound in his brain, as if something exploded, and then a cold electronic sound rose in his brain. The host's life sign was detected, and the anti-heaven system was activated. The determination was successful. Host, Lin Haotian, the Immortal Cultivation Blood Awakening Progress 1%, and the current cultivation is, no. System mission is released, survive for 24 hours to avoid being captured by the Immortal Cultivation Alliance. Mission award, 1 book of basic thunder-type martial arts, failure penalty, imprisoned. Lin Haotian was frozen in place, his brain was blank. What's this thing? System? Bloody pills of immortal cultivation? To wipe it out? Isn't this a routine that only exists in novels? But the cold voice continued, "Warning, the enemy is detected to be close to the target, and it is recommended that the host escape immediately." He hadn't returned to his senses. The thin bamboo pole man had already narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Old Zhang, this boy has a spirit wave, and he probably just woke up." He caught it and handed it over to the Alliance, saying that he might be able to change some resources. When Lin Haotian heard this, he didn't dare to think too much and just turned around and ran away. But he, an ordinary person, could not escape these 2 guys at first glance, but he was not a good guy. After taking a few steps, the man with a thin bamboo pole swept his hand, and a firelight burst out from his palm and smashed straight towards Lin Haotian's back. Trouble! What is this? Lin Haotian was so scared that he was about to fly. He quickly fell to the ground with his body. The flames brushed against his shoulders and smashed on the wall, causing a charred black. His heart beats as if he is about to explode, and the system sounds in his brain sound again. Warning: the enemy attacks a low-level fire system technique. It is recommended that the host respond or find a cover. What a counterattack! I don't know what the method is. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth and said, got up and ran deep into the alley. Boy, don't prick it. Come with us obediently to avoid suffering from flesh and blood. The bearded and slowly approached. Lin Haotian leaned against the earthen wall, sweating heavily, and felt panicked. He looked down and found that there was an electric flash in his palm. Although it was weak, it was indeed there. He was stunned for a moment, and the system sound in his brain sounded again. It was detected that the host thunder system blood vessel was initially activated. It is recommended to use the power of lightning to counterattack. Operation method: concentrate your mind, and the mind guides the spirit to the palm of your hand. The power of thunder and electricity? Just kidding. Although Lin Haotian didn't believe it, he had no other choice but to try it hard. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to concentrate. Sure enough, he felt a faint heat flowing from his body to his palm. When he slid his eyes again, a thin arc was already lying on his palm. Although it didn't look good, it was at least a little bit energetic. Hey, brother, you guys, don't force me to do it. Lin Haotian started his hand and put on a very cool look. His heart was so stupid. The man with thin bamboo pole saw this and laughed. Dare to scare people when I wake up? Look at me burning you with such a little spark. As he said, his palm flipped, and another firelight came towards Lin Haotian. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth and pushed his hand forward suddenly. There was only one thought in his brain: blow me up. I saw the long arc wave sound coming out. Although it looked so delicate, it actually hit the fire, and a sound of shock came out, and the two forces dissipated at the same time. The trough, is it done? Lin Haotian was shocked himself. He didn't expect that the power of thunder and electricity could really be used. But the two men who faced each other obviously didn't get scared, and snorted coldly. It's a bit interesting, but even with such ability, dare to resist? Kneel down. As he fell, the ground suddenly shook, and the soil under Lin Haotian's foot suddenly raised, turning into a huge dirt hand, and grabbed him directly. Lin Haotian wanted to hide, but his speed could not keep up at all. He was about to be caught. The sound of the system in his brain suddenly burst out. Emergency mission touch. Hit the groundbreaking system method. Reward the spirit value of 10 points. Failure penalty. Deduct 50% of his health. It's really fun. Lin Haotian was reluctant in his heart, but he was not bad at the moment, so he could only force himself. He focused again. The arc on his hand was a little thicker than before, and he suddenly smashed it at the dirt hand. The electric light collided with the earth hand, and a loud noise came out. The earth hand was blown out with a gap, but it still did not completely collapse and continued to press on him. At this moment, a cold voice suddenly came from the depths of the alley. Stop. The earth hand was covered by a layer of frost and stopped in the air, then it broke into pieces with a click. The man with a beard and a thin bamboo pole turned around at the same time. His face changed drastically, and he shouted in a different voice, Miss Su. Lin Haotian gasped heavily and looked up and saw a woman in a long white dress walking out from the depths of the alley. She has a long hair shawl, her skin is as white as snow, her facial features are as delicate as a person walking out of a painting, and her temperament is as cold as an iceberg. Her eyes swept past the two men and said lightly, the dog of the Urban Immortal Cultivation Alliance, do you dare to act casually now, even the newcomers who just woke up? Miss Su, we are just doing our orders. This kid. The man from Skinny Zhugan still wanted to explain, but was so cleared by her eyes that she opened her mouth. Chang. She only said one word, carrying unquestionable pressure. The two men looked at each other, gritted their teeth, turned around and left, and glared at Lin Haotian fiercely before leaving. Lin Haotian relaxed his breath, wiped the sweat from his head, and looked at the woman in front of him, and muttered in his heart, "Who is this big sister? The atmosphere is too strong." He reluctantly smiled and said, "Thank you for saving me. My name is Lin Haotian. You are?" "Su Ruoxue." She knocked him coldly, her eyes stayed on him for a second, then turned around and left, leaving a sentence, "If you don't want to die, don't run around. Xinghai City is not a place where you can get by." Lin Haotian stood there in a daze, watching her back disappear into the alley, with a bunch of questions in his heart. Su Ruoxue? Why does this name sound so familiar? Also, what is that frost just now? Superpower? Magic? He lowered his head and looked at the arc left on his palm, and the system sound in his brain sounded again. "The mission is completed, survival time is 24 hours progress, 1/24. The reward-based thunder-type exercise has been released. Please check it." Only then did he react that he seemed to have really fallen into something amazing. Cultivating immortals? System? Alliance? These words are turned in his brain, but they can't figure it out. But as soon as he walked out of the alley, his phone suddenly shook, and a message popped up on the screen, "Brother, help me. I was blocked in an old place, come quickly." The sender was Zhang Dalai, his best dead party, a guy who stayed at home to play games all day long. Lin Haotian's heart sank. Although Zhang Dalai is not reliable, he never jokes like this. He immediately turned around and found that the phone could not be reached at all. He gritted his teeth and turned around and ran towards the internet cafe that Zhang Dalai often went to, with a sense of bad premonition in his heart. The night in Xinghai City became deeper, and the lights on the street reflected on Lin Haotian's face, looking a little white. What he didn't know was that this night was just the beginning, and a bigger storm was coming towards him. And he is about to set off a craze that is his own in this city. After running for more than 10 minutes, Lin Haotian finally came to the old internet cafe, and several yellow-haired gangsters at the door were punching and kicking him. The man covered his head and collapsed on the ground. It was Zhang Dalai. Lin Haotian's eyes roared and he rushed over and shouted, "Stop it all." Huang Mao turned around and saw the man on his head sneered, "Is there another one who died? Brothers, we have cleaned up together." Lin Haotian clenched his fists, and the sound of the system in his brain sounded again, "Stage mission development, protect the friend Zhang Dalai and defeat the enemy. Mission bonus, spirit value is 20 points, failure penalty, 30% of his health value is deducted." His mouth twitched, thinking that this system would really challenge the mission. But at the moment, he has no choice but to stick to his head. "Lazy, hold on, I'm here to save you." Lin Haotian growled, and his palm once again burst into a faint arc and rushed towards the yellow hair. Although he himself didn't know whether he could win, at least he had to try it. In the night, the sound of the light flashing and the sound of the fists and feet heading up is rising at the internet cafe door. What Lin Haotian didn't know was that this battle was not only to save his brothers, but also to be the first step in his path to immortal cultivation. And the power of Xinghai City's darkness has begun to notice this awakened boy. A bigger game is about to open the curtain. Lin Haotian gasped heavily, the arc on his palm flickered in dark, and he was holding his body and not falling down. The yellow-haired gangsters at the internet cafe were beaten up by him and looked for teeth. The one with his head covered his face and his mouth was still lying, "You kid, wait, dare to move us, seek death." But before the words finished, Lin Haotian glanced over with a cold eye. The electric light in his hand lit up, and the guy closed his mouth and crawled with his subordinates and ran away. "Lazy, are you okay?" Lin Haotian turned his head and looked at Zhang Dalai, squatted down and helped him up. Zhang Dalai's face was blue and purple, and blood was still hanging on the corner of his mouth, but when he grinned, he still showed his heartless smile. "Yutsao, Haotian, when did you become Superman? What is that electric light? Special effects props?" Lin Haotian rolled his eyes in a bad mood and patted the gray on his body. "Little be careful, go back with me first and find a place to talk about it." He knew in his heart that this matter could not be explained in 2 words. Although Zhang Dalai, a guy like Zhang Dalai, was his best brother, and he couldn't stop some things. The two of them supported each other, left the internet cafe door, and found a 24-hour small restaurant to sit down. There were not many people in the store, only a few uncles who were running at night were drinking beer, and the service staff also leaned against the back of the counter to brush their phones. Lin Haotian ordered 2 bottles of mineral water and a few buns, and then poured out a brain after a low voice from the night's retreat. He met the 2 men in black robe from the alley, into some normal system appearing in his brain, and then Su Ruoxue suddenly appeared at the rescue site, which made him feel dry. Zhang Daliai's eyes were so straightened that he bit the bun in his mouth and forgot to chew it. He was stunned for a few seconds before he reacted. Wait, do you mean, are you a cultivator now? Are you still the kind of system? Isn't this a novel routine? Brother, aren't you stupid to work overtime, right? Lin Haotian put his hands helplessly and said in a low voice, I feel so lonely, but look at this. He quietly reached under the table and concentrated his mind. A small arc appeared in the palm of his hand again. Although it was weak, it was still quite eye-catching under the dim light. Zhang Daliai's chin was about to fall off, and he almost screamed, but Lin Haotian still covered his mouth with quick eyes and hands. Small sound, don't attract people. The trough, it's true or false? Zhang Daliai finally calmed down, his eyes full of excitement. Then have you developed this? Cultivating immortals. Will you be able to fly away from heaven and earth in the future and live forever? Bring a brother to a slap. Lin Haotian smiled bitterly and slammed his head. I'm not sure what to do. The system forced me to do the task. If I can't finish it, I will kill you directly. I just saved you and deduct my health. And those from the Immortal Cultivation Alliance are not good at first sight. I guess there will be many troubles in the future. He turned it on and said, as for you, just stay tuned. This matter is too dangerous. Dangerous is nothing. Zhang Daliai slapped the table, and the sound was so loud that several uncles next to him had seen it. He whispered a low voice and said, Brother, I'm having sex with you. Anyway, my life is not meaningless. Isn't it just a day to play every day to live a life of scattered? Why not do something big with you? Maybe I can live a long life. Lin Haotian felt helpless when he looked at his true look. He knew that although Zhang Daliai was not right, he had never missed the chain since the critical moment. But even he himself didn't understand the matter of cultivating immortals. How could he dare to bring his brothers in at will? Just as he was about to refuse, the system sound in his brain suddenly changed. I detected the potential follower, and the temporary mission touch. I will be the first follower to help him awaken his spirit. Mission bonus, spirit value is 50 points, and a basic earth-based martial arts, failure penalty, 40% of his health is deducted. Lin Haotian twitched his lips, thinking that this system would really be more challenging. He lowered his head and pondered for a while, and finally raised his head and said to Zhang Daliai, Okay, since you are so excited that you want to follow, then try it first. But I have said that this road is not easy to walk, and it may be stumbled at any time. Have you really thought it through? Think it clearly. Zhang Daliai patted his chest and filled his face with excitement. From now on, you will be my boss, and you will follow you in the sea of swords and fire. Lin Haotian slammed his head helplessly, and then followed the system's prompts and tried to pass a spear of spirit to Zhang Daliai. Unexpectedly, there was a reaction during this trial. Zhang Daliai shook his body and his face became a little weird. After a long time, he came over and said in surprise, Collection, I feel a heat flowing on my body. What's going on? Don't ask me, I don't understand. Lin Haotian said, the system said that you may have a earth-based spirit root. Let's explore it slowly. His voice fell, and the system prompt sound came up again. The mission has been completed, the reward has been released. The awakening progress of Zhang Daliai Ling's root, 5%, and the current cultivation is, no. When both of them looked at each other, they saw a little excited and confused from each other's eyes. All of this came too quickly, and Lin Haotian even felt unreal, but he knew that from tonight, his life would never be back. In the next few days, Lin Haotian and Zhang Daliai did not rush to come, but instead found a remote abandoned construction site and secretly practiced the skills provided by the system. Lin Haotian's thunder technique is called Thunder Insight. Although it is only at the level of entry, it is very powerful when practicing. From several worlds, he can condense a lightning arc that can directly blow out a pit when hitting the stone. Zhang Daliai's earth-based exercise is called Thick Earth Style, which is mainly a type of defense. After practicing until he can now call out a small piece of earth wall. Although it doesn't look great, it can at least block Lin Haotian's thunder arc to investigate. Haotian, do you think we are considered superpowers? Zhang Daliai wiped his sweat and asked with a smile, why don't we register for any competition, maybe we can win a championship or something. What are you thinking? Lin Haotian replied without any worries, this thing is not for performance. I didn't see the person in the alley that day. He was just a fireball and earth wall. With such skills, when we meet a real immortal cultivator, we probably won't even have tooth plugging. As he was speaking, a deep sound suddenly came from a distance, like a heavy machinery was moving. Lin Haotian glanced at his eyebrows, stood up and looked in the direction of the sound, and saw that in the ruins on the other side of the construction site, several people wearing a monolithic black uniform were busy working against a strange machine. The machine looked like a huge metal circle, with dense runes engraved on the surface, emitting blue light. What's this? Zhang Daliai also came over and muttered in a low voice, it looks quite high-tech, but it doesn't look like something modern. Lin Haotian's heart sank, and he thought that this thing had something to do with cultivating immortals. He pulled Zhang Daliai and hid behind a pile of waste irons and said in a low voice, don't make a sound, look at the situation first, it may be the person of the Immortal Cultivation Alliance. As soon as he fell, the system sounded in his brain, the spiritual detection device was detected, and it was initially determined that it was the equipment used by the Immortal Cultivation Alliance to search for those who awaken the spirit roots. It is recommended that the host evacuate immediately to avoid exposure. Removing your head. Lin Haotian cried in his heart. At this moment, it must be too late to run away, so he could only hide and take a look. He signaled Zhang Daliai to distract himself, and the two of them held their breath and watched the static movements there quietly. After a while, a familiar figure walked out from behind the ruins, which was the man with beards in the alley that day. He was also followed by several people, one of whom was wearing a long gray robe, and his atmosphere was obviously stronger than the others. He said in a low voice, the spirit waves in this area are getting more and more frequent, and 80% of newcomers wake up, and the detector reaches its maximum power, so people must be found. The bearded pointed his head a little and said respectfully, don't worry, Wang, we have locked up several suspicious targets. One of them is the boy in the alley that day. Although he was hit by Miss Su, his spirit fluctuations are very special, and it should be a thunder-type blood. Thunder system? The man who was called Wang Shi flashed his eyes and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth, it's interesting. I don't see much of the thunder system blood. If you can catch it and train it carefully, it may be used by the Alliance. If you don't listen, you will just wipe it out to avoid becoming a threat. When Lin Haotian heard this, his heart felt cold. He knew that this helper was talking about him, but he didn't expect that the other party would be on him so soon. Zhang Daliai also heard his face pale and said in a short voice, Haotian, what should I do? This helper is not easy to mess with at first glance. Don't panic first. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, they haven't found us yet. Find a chance to slip away, don't come. But just after he finished speaking, the metal circular plate suddenly screamed with sharp chirpings, and the blue light was flourishing. Then a beam of light rushed straight towards the place where they were hiding. No, I've been discovered. Lin Haotian felt nervous and pulled Zhang Daliai out from behind the wasteland and ran towards the other end of the construction site. Several people there immediately responded and shouted with a beard, catch them there. For a while, several magic lights followed behind, including fireballs, earth thorns, and a few spiritual waves that could not be seen. Lin Haotian ran back to his head, swung his palm, and rushed out a lightning arc, smashing a fireball, but the other attacks still forced them to wreck. Zhang Dalai gritted his teeth and tried to summon a dirt wall, and he slammed a few attacks, but the dirt wall was quickly broken, and he was shocked by himself. "Lazy, hold it!" Lin Haotian growled, and his brain flew quickly, looking for a way to take his back. But at this moment, a cold chill suddenly came from the side, instantly ending a few rays of magic lights that chased them. Then a familiar voice sounded. "I said, Xinghai City is not a place where you can come by at will." Lin Haotian suddenly turned around, only seeing Su Ruoxue standing on the top of the ruins that were not far away. Her long hair was flying and her air was so cold that it made people feel sick. Her palms slapped lightly, and a piece of frost quickly spread out, directly pushing the beards back. When the king saw this, his face darkened and he said in a deep voice, "Su Ruoxue, do you have to fight against the alliance? We discovered these two boys first, and you can't interfere." "Intervene?" Su Ruoxue sneered, his eyes like a knife. "The king's dominance, the rules of the alliance do not say that you can kill newcomers at will. Or do you say that you have forgotten your original oath and only regard your own self-interest?" Wang Bashing's face was so blue that it was obviously poked into the pain, but he didn't say anything more, just snorted coldly and said with his hands, "We'll leave, this matter is not over." After saying that, he quickly withdrew with his cheeks and bearded, and glared at Lin Haotian fiercely before leaving. Lin Haotian relaxed his breath, wiped the sweat from his head, and turned to Su Ruoxue. "I saved me again, thank you. But why did you always appear like this by chance?" Su Ruoxue glanced at him and said lightly, "I didn't save you, I just couldn't treat the alliance's behavior. The thunder blood on you is very special. The alliance will not let you go easily. If you want to survive, you have to become stronger." After saying that, she turned around and left Lin Haotian and Zhang Dalai to face each other. "This sister is so cool." Zhang Dalai couldn't help but mutter, "Haotian, do you think she is interesting to you? Otherwise, why should you help you? Don't talk nonsense." Lin Haotian knocked his brain without any worries, and he was confused. Su Ruoxue is unknown, but every time he appears, it helps him. How can he really be of the purpose? He snatched his head and decided not to think too much. The most important thing to worry about right now is to improve his strength. Otherwise, if he meets Wang Bashing next time, he will probably not be so good. "Let's go, Lazy, we have to find a safer place to practice." Lin Haotian patted Zhang Dalai on the shoulder, and the two left the construction site while the night was falling. They all knew in their hearts that the days ahead would only become more and more difficult. A few days later, Lin Haotian found a secret underground warehouse through the guidance of the system, as a temporary hiding place. This place was originally a relic of a broken company in Xinghai City. It was located remotely and there was a boundary left outside, which could barely cover up the fluctuations of spirit. He and Zhang Dalai continued to cultivate the building here, and their strength improved a lot, but the system's mission was getting worse and worse. Every time they forced them to challenge some dangerous places or deal with some low-level cultivators. That night, the system suddenly released a new task, mainline mission development, dive into the underground auction of Xinghai City, and gain spiritual essence. Mission award, spirit value is 100 points, and a medium-level thunder system technique is 1 book, failure penalty, smear. Lin Haotian looked at the mission description and his face turned black. Underground auction? It sounds like the ground plate of the cultivator. Given his cultivation point now, isn't it a delivery of food when he goes there? But the system's threat of wiping out is no joke, he can only prepare for it. Zhang Dalai didn't object after hearing this, but instead looked excited. "Brother, this is a big scene. I might be able to miss something good. Let's go and have a look together." Lin Haotian was helpless at the head, and the two of them cleaned up briefly, switched to the disguise props provided by the system, and set off towards the mission location. The underground auction in Xinghai City said it was hidden in an abandoned shopping mall in the west of the city. It looked broken on the surface, but there was no place inside. Lin Haotian and Zhang Dalai took a little effort to get in and found that there were many immortal cultivators gathered in it, and the atmosphere was very intense and strange. The auction venue is located on 3 underground layers of the mall, and boundaries are used to separate the outside world from outside exploration. In the center is a huge circular platform with all kinds of strange things on it, including spirit grass, talismans, and even a few ancient magic weapons. Lin Haotian sat in the corner with a low profile, observing the crowd around him, thinking about how to complete the task. At this moment, a familiar figure walked onto the auction platform, which was the King of Kings. He was wearing a gray robe and had a strong atmosphere. After watching the whole scene, he said in a deep voice, "It's important, today's auction has an important role, spiritual essence. It is said that it can directly improve the cultivation level to a higher level. The base price is 500,000 spirit stone. Now we are starting to take a photo." Lin Haotian was shocked. Spiritual energy was exactly his mission goal, but he could not even think about the price of 500,000 spirit stones. It seems that this mission is not simple, and maybe I have to face Wang Bashing head-on. He lowered his head and exchanged glances with Zhang Dalai. Both of them understood that this auction would not be calm. Lin Haotian sat in the corner of the auction venue, his hat was pressed low, and his eyes never left the central auction platform for a moment. Zhang Dalai next to him looked like a tight look, holding a bottle of mineral water in his hand, muttering in his mouth, "Haotian, we can't take out 50,000 spirit stones, what should we do? You can't just snatch it, right? Put your head." Lin Haotian replied in a low voice, his brain moving at a speed. He knew that this spiritual essence was the goal of the system's mission and must be obtained, otherwise the punishment for the smear would not be played with. But in this situation, there is no way to shoot. The only thing you can do is find a chance to attack. But here are all immortal cultivators. If you act casually, you will probably not know how to die. On the auction stage, Wang Bashing's voice was still low and powerful, with an unquestionable threat. "The spirit is sophisticated, the base price is 500,000 spirit stones, and the price must be less than 50,000 each time. Those who are interested please bid." The voice fell, and several obvious and outstanding immortal cultivators on the scene began to pay the price. The price quickly reached 800,000 spirit stones, and the atmosphere became more and more intense. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth, and suddenly the cold reminder of the system came to his brain. Mission reminder: spiritual essence is the core item of the mainline mission. It is recommended that the host formulate a seizure plan. The current success rate is estimated, 7%. His mouth twitched, thinking that this success rate is too distant. What is the difference between 7% and death? But he didn't have time to complain, so he could only continue to observe the static surroundings and find an opportunity. At this moment, a cold sound echoed from the other side of the scene: 1,000,000 spirit stones. The sound was not loud, and it instantly calmed down the whole scene, and everyone looked at the source of the sound. Lin Haotian also looked up and found that the person who was talking was Su Ruoxue. She was dressed in white, her temperament was as cold as ice, and she sat in the front position in the field, her eyes as calm as a pool of stagnant water, and she didn't care about the gazes of the people around her. "Miss Su has taken action. I have a good idea here." Zhang Dalai muttered in small voice, his eyes full of excitement. Lin Haotian only snaked his eyebrows, and he had a bad feeling in his heart. Su Ruoxue always appears and has something to do with her. This time she suddenly bids, can't she help herself again? Or is she having a different purpose? Wang Bashing certainly did not expect Su Ruoxue to intervene. His face changed slightly, but soon returned to normal. He said in a deep voice, "Miss Su bid for 1,000,000 spirit stones, is there any higher?" After a moment of silence in the venue, several immortal cultivators who originally wanted to compete looked at it and chose to give up. After all, Su Ruoxue's background and strength were there, and no one was willing to offend her for this. Since no one increases the price, then the spirit and spirit are all Miss Su. Wang Bashi knocked on the auction hammer, and there was a hint of reluctance in his voice. He glanced at Su Ruoxue, then waved his hand and signaled his subordinates to send the spirit. Lin Haotian looked at the essence in the transparent jade box and felt anxious. He knew that if he didn't take action now, his mission would be soaked in the end. Lazy, be prepared, we have to win. Lin Haotian said to Zhang Dalai in a low voice, with a sudden decision in his eyes. Zhang Dalai was stunned for a moment, but he quickly pointed and asked in a low voice, what should I do? Just push it up? I'm so shit, wait for the opportunity. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth and his eyes closed on Su Ruoxue. He decided to look at the situation first, saying that he might find a breakthrough from Su Ruoxue. After all, she had helped her several times before, so she should not ignore her life or death. The auction will continue, but Lin Haotian's attention is all on Su Ruoxue. After a while, the auction ended and the crowds in the venue dispersed. Su Ruoxue took the jade box and stood up and walked towards a passage behind the venue. Lin Haotian immediately pulled Zhang Dalai to follow, and the two of them mixed in a low voice and quietly followed. The light in the passage is dim, and there is a damp smell in the air. On both sides are broken walls, you can hear the sound of dripping water from afar. Su Ruoxue didn't walk fast, and seemed to have not noticed the follow-up behind her. Lin Haotian was in a tight mood, and the palm of his hand had begun to condense a lightning arc, and he was ready to move at any time. But at this moment, Su Ruoxue suddenly stopped walking, turned around, and looked coldly in the direction where they were hiding. I've been following you for so long, come out. Her voice was cold and she felt impatient. Lin Haotian's heart sank. He knew that he could not hide anymore, so he could only walk out with his head. Zhang Dalai also followed him and slapped his head in an awkward manner. Miss Su, don't miss it, we are passing by. Lin Haotian tried to find an excuse, but he felt strong when he said that he could express it. Su Ruoxue sneered, and his eyes swept over him like a knife, passed by. Lin Haotian, do you think I am blind? Tell me, what are you staring at this spiritual essence? Lin Haotian gritted his teeth and knew that he was ignorant, so he simply said, I need this thing, there is no other way, I can only come to you. Miss Su, you have helped me a few times before, can you help me again and give me this essence? I owe you a favor, and I will definitely pay it back in the future. Su Ruoxue heard it, and her eyebrows slightly snaked, as if she was thinking about something. After a while, she said lightly, the spirit and spirit are useless to me. I took a photo because I didn't want to get the king and bastard. But it's not impossible for you to want it. The condition is to go to the same place with me. Where to go? Lin Haotian was stunned, feeling confused that this matter was not simple. Su Ruoxue didn't answer directly, but just said coldly, you will know when you go. Whether you answer or not is a pleasure. Lin Haotian and Zhang Dalai looked at each other, and both of them understood that this might be the only chance to get spiritual essence. Although Su Ruoxue seems to be difficult to mess with, at least he has not shown any intention of being a vicious person at the moment. Lin Haotian gritted his teeth and pointed, okay, I agree. But my brother Zhang Dalai also has to go together. Let's talk about it and take care of it together if you have something to do. Su Ruoxue glanced at Zhang Dalai, but did not object, but turned around and continued to walk forward. Come on, don't waste your time. Lin Haotian and Zhang Dalai hurriedly followed, feeling a little nervous, not knowing what they would encounter this time. The passage became deeper and deeper, and the air became colder and colder. Some ancient runes began to appear on the walls on both sides, scattering faint spiritual waves. After about 10 minutes of walking, a huge stone door suddenly appeared in front of him, with complex patterns engraved on it, and a crystal stone the size of a fist was embedded in the center, emitting a dark blue light. This is... Lin Haotian was shocked when he looked at the stone gate. He could feel that there was a powerful force behind the door, which even made the spirit inside him feel a little restless. Su Ruoxue stopped walking and said to him, this is the entrance to the ancient secret realm underground in Xinghai City. There is an immortal weapon hidden inside that can reverse the rules of the heavenly Tao. I need your thunder blood to help you open the ban and use it as exchange, and the spirit essence will be used to you. Immortal weapon? Reverse the way of heaven? Lin Haotian was stunned, and the sound of the system in his brain suddenly sounded, mainline mission update, help Su Ruoxue open the ancient secret realm and obtain the immortal weapon. Mission bonus, to improve 1 level, a book of high-level thunder skills. If you fail, you must punish it. He twitched the corners of his mouth, thinking that this system will really be coded at the time, but there is no other choice at the moment, so he can only hold his head hard. Okay, the deal. Lin Haotian pointed his head and his eyes were calm. Su Ruoxue didn't say anything more. When she walked to the stone gate, her palm pressed lightly on the crystal in the center. A cold spirit stormed out from her palm. The crystal glowed brightly, and then the whole stone gate began to move slowly. Lin Haotian followed her instructions and injected the thunder spirit into the crystal stone. The two forces exchanged, and a deep slaughter was released, and the stone door finally opened. Behind the door is a dark space, with a heavy spirit in the air, which makes people almost breathless. Lin Haotian and the other two walked in carefully and found that it looked like a huge underground palace. The walls around it were full of ancient wall paintings. In the center was a huge sacrificial tent, with a golden ray floating on it, which looked like a broken longsword, scattering the mighty that made people's hearts palpitations. This is an immortal weapon. Su Ruoxue rarely brought a burst of excitement in her voice, but she quickly returned to her calmness and said to Lin Haotian, "There is a band around the sacrificial supreme. My ice-type spirit cannot be cracked, and it requires your thunder-type power. Be careful, the band counters are very strong, and you will be crushed if you are not careful." Lin Haotian pointed his head, took a deep breath, walked to the fortress, stretched out his palms, and then he suddenly smashed towards the forbidden light curtain around the fortification. The lightning collided with the light curtain, and a deafening sound came out, and the entire palace began to shake. Lin Haotian bit his teeth and almost got exhausted, but the band finally began to appear cracks. At this moment, a cold voice came from the entrance of the palace. "Su Ruoxue, Lin Haotian, you really have a sage. You dare to enter the secret realm privately." Lin Haotian turned his head and found that Wang Bashing was standing at the entrance with a group of immortal cultivators. His eyes were fierce, and his fire-type spirit was circling on his body, which was obviously bad for those who came. "Wang Bashing, you are coming quickly." Su Ruoxue snorted coldly, and his palm slapped, and the frost quickly spread out, forming an ice wall that was pressed in front of the three of them. Lin Haotian's heart sank. Knowing that this battle could not be avoided, he said to Zhang Dalai in a low voice, "Lazy, protect yourself and don't force me. Don't worry, I'm thick-skinned and thick-skinned, so I can hold it up." Zhang Dalai gritted his teeth and summoned a thick earthen wall to prepare for the striking. Wang Bashing sneered, and with a slight snarling hand, several fire dragons roared and rushed in, directly hitting the ice wall and earth wall, making a huge explosion sound, and the entire palace was shaking. Lin Haotian knew that he could not delay, so he turned around and continued to attack the ban. Thunder lights hit the light curtain one by one, and finally broke the ban at the last moment. The magic weapon radiated a dazzling golden light and flew towards him. At the same time, the system sounded in his brain, "The magic weapon has been successful and has been practicing to the middle stage of the spiritual base realm. The thunder-type high-level martial art Thunder Wan Ku has been released." Lin Haotian held the sword and felt a powerful force rushing into his body. The thunder spirit suddenly exploded, and his entire human atmosphere became different. He turned to look at Wang Bashing, his eyes cold, and a thunder slammed down directly, shattering the other party's fire dragon into 2.5. How is this possible? Wang Bashing's face changed drastically. He didn't expect Lin Haotian to break through to this point in such a short time. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Give it to me, kill them, and return to the immortal weapon." A group of immortal cultivators immediately rushed up, the magic light flashed, and the scene was in a mess. Su Ruoxue and Zhang Dalai fought with all their strength. Lin Haotian held the sword in his hand, and the lightning was surround. The whole person was like a thunder god, and each blow was filled with the atmosphere of destroying the sky and the earth. Wang Bashing saw the situation and knew that it would be defeated if he dragged on it, so he simply poured his energy into a huge fire, and rushed towards Lin Haotian directly. "Go to die." Wang Bashing's voice was filled with resentment, and the heat of the fire almost melted the entire palace. Lin Haotian's eyes flashed. He lifted a slap and growled, "Thunder Ray!" A thick thunder pillar fell from the sky, colliding with the fire, making a sound of shocking the earth. The top of the palace was blown up directly, and the gravel fell like rain. The smoke dissipated. Lin Haotian gasped and stood there in his hands holding the slap, his body covered with scars, but his air was not reduced. Wang Bashing fell far away, his body was charred, and his life and death were unknown. The cultivators beside him saw the situation and fled in scattered places and never dared to stay again. "Haotian, you are so awesome." Zhang Dalai wiped the ashes from his face and walked over with a grin. Although he was covered in wolf crows, his eyes were filled with admiration. Su Ruoxue also walked over and smiled rarely. "It's not bad, I didn't disappoint." Lin Haotian smiled nervously, held the sword tightly, and suddenly felt a strong will coming from the sword. Then the system sound in the brain sounded again, warning, "The will of heaven is hidden in the immortal weapon, and the host's rule of threatening the way of heaven is detected." The new mainline mission development, to fight against the way of heaven, change fate. Mission reward, unknown, failure punishment, to erase. Lin Haotian was stunned for a moment, then looked at Su Ruoxue and said in a low voice, "There is a problem with this immortal weapon. It seems that the will of the way of heaven is hidden inside. We are afraid that we will face greater trouble next." Su Ruoxue looked at her head and her eyes were fixed. "I know that the ancestors of my family also tried to challenge the way of heaven that year, but failed. This time, I will not retreat. I'm the same." Zhang Dalai patted his chest and grinned, "Brother, you've gotten rid of the swords and mountains of fire and seas. What's this heavenly way? Let's do it together." Lin Haotian looked at the two people beside him, and a warm feeling surged in his heart. He held the sword tightly, and the lightning was surrounding his body, with a sense of unyielding look in his eyes. "Okay, let's come together and see how hard this heaven is." The three of them smiled at each other, then turned around and walked towards the depths of the palace, ready to face a bigger challenge. Under the night sky of Xinghai City, the high-rise building is still brightly lit. Ordinary people are still living an ordinary life, but they don't know that there is a storm that is against the sky underground. Lin Haotian's figure disappeared into the darkness, but his story was never over.